All right, everybody.
Hello.
Good morning. Oh, Aileen, she's right on time. Hey, Aileen. Okay, gonna do some breathing right now, guys. All right, everyone. Let's take a deep breath in and exhale. 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 And exhale. Last one. And exhale. Alrighty.
Thank you.
All done.
Thank you. So, good morning, everyone. Sam, Tiff, and Irma, Michelle, Aline. Who else do we have here? Kenneth, Rukaya, and Tiffany. I think I said everyone's name. And Miss Ridgway. Good morning. So we are going to today just have a short discussion, a short class. We're going to show an excerpt from a video, a recording, a documentary made by Dr. Henry Louis Gates, who is a professor of African American history at Harvard University. And he
I said in TV personality.
Yes, now TV personality, producer, documentary
maker.
Yeah. I think he does that more than he's an actual professor nowadays. So that's really, exciting for him and exciting for us because he makes great material for us.
Yeah. If you ever seen Blacks in Latin America, that's his baby, his creation.
Yeah, and when we show the video, you guys are going to be like, "Oh, him? Yeah, him. You know him from what's that other show he has?
Finding Your Roots.
Finding Your Roots. That's where most people know him from. Yeah. And so he made a number of documentaries. This one is called African Americans, Many Rivers to Cross. And I actually have the set. It is at school though, but then I realized that we have it on Amazon Prime as well. So I'm excited.
Amazon Prime.
What again?
I said, who does not have Amazon Prime at this point?
Well, some people don't, but it's a privilege. It's a privilege.
No, I'm saying more so because we're all home, so everyone's ordering things from Amazon.
True. This is true. And it was, some of my students who put me onto it. So, so I'm going to show you the first 19 minutes of the documentary. And I promise you it's interesting. And a lot of the material is what Ms. Ridgway already taught you, what we already went through. And so it will be enrichment and review for all of you. And I hope to strengthen your understanding of what you were already taught. And I just have 2 discussion questions for you. So after we watch the documentary, just the first 19 minutes, I have 2 discussion questions. The first discussion question says to consider the ways in which this documentary has challenged, changed, or expanded your knowledge base. And what we mean by challenge is that you were taught something, but now this might be saying something a little different, and maybe you're not sure about how this could be, and you have a question about it. So it's challenging your thoughts and what you're thinking, and what you previously knew. You might be in some cognitive dissonance. Change means, you know, you used to think this, I should say use with an ED. If I could go back up there and change that, I would. Um, so you used to think this, but now you know this. And this is important to understand because, you know, and so that's how you would explain how your knowledge has now changed due to what you've seen. Um, and then the last one is your knowledge base has been expanded. So now you know something more. And it's important for you to know this because whatever that reason is. And then the second question, you don't have to answer all parts, all A, B, and C. You're only answering that question once. Unless you want to go on and you have multiple examples, then you can do all A, B, and C. And then the second question is if you could ask Gates or anyone a question, me or Ms. Ridgway, or anyone in the documentary that they're talking about, what would that question be? So, do you have any questions about the questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Can I answer the questions?
Of course.
Okay.
All right. Anyone else have any questions? All right. And then when I start the presentation, as you know, I can't see. So, Ms. Ridgway, when is lunch? After class. So, Ms. Ridgway.
You can eat it while you're in class. It's okay if you don't mind.
Yeah. Break out your popcorn.
And then don't leave after either, because we just want to go over the schedule. And this is important, especially for those of you who are not at Central or not at Northeast. We want to make sure you're able to still access class and you know when class will be. So,
yes, most importantly,
yeah,
we want to keep and hold you all.
yes.
How do I do this? All right. I know what I'm doing.
Aileen's bird is just looking at me, and I'm waiting for it to say Polly want a cracker.
All right. Can you see the screen?
Yep.
Okay. And when I start playing it, let me know if you can hear it too. Are we good?
Yep.
Yay.
The dawning of the 20th century brought cruel repression to the African American people. But the strategies that they employed to fight back led to profound transformations
Like that?
Yeah.
All right.
in American society as Black people reinvented themselves. The migrants fleeing the South realigned the racial composition of virtually every city and town in the North and the Midwest. And in the process, Black culture experienced a renaissance and unprecedented economic and political growth. As the 19th century drew to a close, nearly 8 million African Americans still lived in the South.
I pick up my life and take it on the train to Los Angeles, Bakersfield, Seattle, Oakland, Salt Lake, any place that is north and west and not south.
Just 30 years after the end of slavery, life for most African Americans had become increasingly harsh.
I am fed up with Jim Crow laws, people who are cruel and afraid, who lynch and run, who are scared of me and me of them. So I pick up my life and take it away on a one-way ticket.
With separate but equal the law of the land, enforcing segregation could be a brutal enterprise. Consequently, many African Americans were beginning to look for a way out of the South.
Gone up north, gone out west, gone.
Starting in the 1890s, African Americans began to migrate north and west, first as a trickle, then as a flood. It would come to be known as the Great Migration, and it would last for generations to come. By the time it ended, it would arguably be the largest exodus of people in American history. But it began with a slow stream of pioneers. What was happening in the South that made the migration occur?
The late 19th century, that was a period of time when things were getting pretty tough in the South. And anyone who had a political opinion that expressed it really had to leave.
African Americans carried with them much more than their meager possessions. They carried their hopes, their dreams, and their culture. How in the world did all those people travel?
Anyway, mobility is such an important part of freedom. I mean, that's at the core of it, isn't it? Of course, for the Great Migration, but it was also another opportunities for self-realization, to find themselves, to get the boot off their neck.
The boot on the neck of African Americans belonged to Jim Crow, the set of legal and extra-legal measures that tried to keep them thoroughly in their place.
From the moment that they woke up to the moment that they went to sleep, every aspect of their lives was controlled and determined by an artificial hierarchy that replicated aspects of enslavement. There were black and white Bibles to swear to tell the truth on in court. It was actually against the law for black people and white people to even play checkers together. And that had an overlay over every single thing that they can do and everything that they could imagine themselves being.
Jim Crow was not just a system of laws excluding black people from public accommodations. It was a code of conduct that relegated African Americans to second-class citizenship.
To reach your maturity as a male, at this time, you were expected to step off sidewalks. Your eyes were never to gaze directly into those of a white person. Perish the thought that any eye contact with a female occur. This was the policing of a population. Life was one of saturated oppression.
Lynchings were fast becoming the weapon of choice for enforcing Jim Crow and reinforcing the notion of white supremacy. By the turn of the century, as many as 3 lynchings occurred each week. Some were widely advertised and drew large crowds, picnic basket in tow.
Figure, if you will, some community 50 miles away from an advertised event of retribution, a lynching, would pack bags and get on the buggy and hurry there. Multiply that tenfold, and then you have hundreds of people there to witness and indeed to leave with souvenirs of the flesh and bone of the victim. This was a barbarism that should have placed the South beyond the pale.
These grisly events spared no one, man, woman, or child. And they didn't always involve a rope and a tree. In Memphis, here at a place called The Curve, stood the People's Grocery, a food co-op owned by a well-respected African-American, Thomas Moss. The success of Moss's store threatened a white competitor. To put him out of business, a mob attacked. Moss and his partners took up arms to defend themselves. When the smoke cleared, several of the attackers lay wounded, while Moss and his defenders were hauled off to jail. Before long, a lynch mob came, pulled them from their cells, and dragged them to the outskirts of town. There, before a group of local reporters, Thomas Moss was asked if he had anything left to say. He answered, "Tell my people to go west. There is no justice for them here." So this is where he's buried. Look, they put at rest.
At rest.
It's horrible.
It really brings back the manner of his death, which was so brutal.
No, they were making a statement.
They replicated the injuries of whites that had been shot in this melee. And the whites had been shot, one man in the eye, in the cheek and throat.
Oh, and that's how they shot?
And that's how they shot.
Oh, that's horrible. That's terrible.
Yeah.
The Moss case attracted the attention of many African Americans in the South, largely due to Moss's friendship with journalist Ida B. Wells. In a series of provocative editorials published in her newspaper, the Memphis Free Speech, Wells condemned the Moss killings and the practice of lynching.
When Ida B. Wells hears about the lynching, she doesn't know what she's going to write about it. But then she remembers Thomas Moss's last words, and she decides to say, there's only one thing we can do. Save our nickels and dimes. Leave Memphis, a place that will not protect us and murders us in cold blood.
With that, Ida B. Wells, born into slavery, became our country's leading anti-lynching crusader. Her words enraged her white neighbors, who destroyed her newspaper offices. She was threatened with lynching if she ever returned to Memphis. In this editorial, she spoke the unspeakable.
She spoke the unspeakable. Talk about truth to power.
Truth to power.
And the interesting thing about her, she knew how explosive it was, but she was just determined to follow what she calls the logic of lynching to its end. She said, may the heavens might fall, but I'm going to tell the truth about lynching.
The truth about lynching, according to Wells, was that it was an unjustifiable act of economic jealousy and sexual anxiety, an instrument of terror and control. In the weeks and months following, thousands of Black people from Memphis joined the early migration out of the South. Their exodus created a problem. The Southern economy was still largely agrarian, dependent upon African Americans to do the jobs no one else wanted, at a wage few others would accept.
People are leaving the South. And indeed, curiously enough, there is a pushback on the part of many whites in the South who say, wait a minute, we have to calibrate our bestiality. I mean, if we start losing these people, why, that's not the game plan.
Who would cook, clean, and care for the children? Till the fields, harvest the crops.
The interaction between the former slaveholders and those who had been enslaved had not changed fundamentally when it came to interpersonal interactions and the expectations of how one should behave.
And economic exploitation. It's incredible, isn't it?
It was like a bad marriage.
Yeah.
The Emancipation Proclamation had not lived up to its name. People had not truly been free. The Great Migration is really about freedom. It's about identity. It's about claiming one's citizenship, one's Americanness, ultimately about agency.
While some Black leaders advocated leaving the South behind, there were other influential voices urging African Americans to resist the siren song of the North and to stay right where they were.
1/3 of the population of the South is of the Negro race. No enterprise can disregard this element of our population and reach the highest success.
Born a slave himself, Booker T. Washington believed that former slaves and their masters shared a common role in the creation of the New South. to help transform it economically. If the South was ever going to leave that antebellum plantation mentality behind, it would require the mutual cooperation of Black people and white people alike.
Booker T. Washington was a very practical man because he was a person who could see the world as it is.
Those of my race who depend on bettering their condition, I would say, cast down your bucket where you are.
He's saying to the Black people, you don't need to leave. You don't need to go north. You can stay here.
As a practical man, Washington argued that political rights for African Americans could only be won from a position of economic strength and self-sufficiency.
He believed that eventually white people would come to realize the value of Black workers.
Cast down making friends in every manly way of the people of all races by whom you are surrounded.
He saw himself as a mediating figure between the white South and the Black South.
The product of a vocational education himself, Washington argued that by learning a trade, African Americans would hold the key to their own advancement. He went on to found the Tuskegee Institute, which trained African Americans in vocational and technical skills and advocated self-help. Tuskegee was not alone. The Negro Women's Club movement created far-reaching social networks that promoted racial uplift. Black churches and benevolent societies lent money to entrepreneurs starting out in business. A washerwoman named Sarah Breedlove relied on just such a network. After changing her name to Madam C.J. Walker, she launched a hair product company and was hailed as the first self-made female millionaire, Black or white. Fueled in part by the hardships of Jim Crow, these success stories were a byproduct of a system of laws that forced Black people to live in their own world. Necessity became the mother of invention. African Americans made a way out of no way.
Our people didn't give up. They didn't say, we're overwhelmed and overcome, and therefore we'll just turn on ourselves. They looked to their own institutions, their churches. Out of those churches, they will build schools, they will build insurance companies, they will build banks. It's just amazing, all that is happening.
While Black land ownership was on the rise, and a small Black middle class was emerging, another, more sinister phenomenon was taking root to counteract these gains. And in those days, it took little more than a trip to the mailbox to see it.
This is our row of caricatures. The Pickaninny, the Tom, the Coon, the Tragic Mulatto, the Jezebel, the Savage. All groups, all racial and ethnic groups in this country have been caricatured. None of them has been caricatured as often or in as many ways as have Africans and their American descendants.
David Pilgrim is the founder of the Jim Crow Museum at Ferris State University in Michigan, home to the largest collection of racist memorabilia in the country.
You can take any piece that you see in here, and they do two things. The first thing is they reflect existing attitudes toward Black people. But the other thing, and maybe more important, is they shaped future attitudes toward Black people.
The redefinition of the African American takes place in this period of time. The African American in antebellum times was, the stereotype held, reliable, faithful, hardworking, malleable. Indeed, one entrusted one's children, one's property to such people. Now, of a sudden, the African American becomes demonized, a threat, a lascivious beast roaming the countryside of the South, people loosed by the end of slavery and now upon us like locusts. Well, this was an absurdity.
A massive propaganda campaign demeaning African Americans and legitimizing violence against them was fundamental to reinforcing Jim Crow.
And that is one of the most vulgar depictions of African American children that we have in here.
Well, they're not human, they're bait.
That's right. They look like a litter.
This is a postcard?
Yeah, that was a postcard. Actually, what that one says is, "Dear Aunt Libby, this is what they do to the bad people in Delaware." And the significance here is that it shows a Black person being beaten matter-of-fact way. It's the normalizing of violence against Blacks.
And look at this kid's face.
Not only does that teach something about violence against Blacks in this case, but it's also teaching him.
Oh, yeah. It's horrible. David, if Black people were so subjugated, why did white America need to create millions and millions of images of our ancestors' subjugation?
New generations had to be taught those same lessons about this is the way we need to teach Black.
Because our people never were fully subjugated.
They were never, that's right.
Come listen, all you gals and boys, I'm just from Tuckahoe. I'm going to sing a little song. My name's Jim Crow.
While these images were shaping negative perceptions of Black people at home,
All right, guys. That was the first 19 minutes of the documentary. I see your comments in here. I'm going to read through the comments. Right now, what I want you to do is to take about 5 minutes or so to answer numbers 1 and 2.
Hello.
Hello.
You gonna share, Sam?
No.
Oh.
It's just that you guys are keeping mute. That's it.
Well, no, we're giving you guys. Oh, go ahead, Ms. Williams.
Yeah. So yeah, just take about 5 minutes to answer the questions that were posted in the chat box. Do you see them?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're doing right now. We're just taking a few minutes to answer those questions and then to share out. Are you finished, or are you ready to share, or do you need a couple more minutes?
Oh, that's good, Irma.
That is good.
Yeah.
That was one of my questions for number 2. I would ask the man who had the shop that we just saw, the memorabilia shop.
Yeah.
You know, I know why people feel it's important to keep that type of memorabilia, and I know, you know, it belongs in a museum, because it's just a part of history. I know that answer, but at the same time, it's just so hurtful. Like, why do we need to keep it and look at it and be reminded? I know why, I know, but then the other part of me is why. It's still asking why. In the same way, you know, we knock down these Confederate statues. I know, because these statues are supposed to be honoring these really bad men.
Right.
But at the same time, these statues are also a reminder of what happened and who these people are. So in the same way,
Yeah. Put it in the museum.
it's memorabilia.
Out of a courthouse.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So maybe it's the placement.
Yeah. Not to get off track, but I showed Just Mercy to my kids yesterday.
Oh.
Um, you know, just watching them watch it is really interesting. And, you know, every time we watch something like that, you can just see like the questioning in their faces, like, why? You know, what did Black people ever do to deserve any of this? And so, you know, it's also almost like kind of seeing the innocence kind of leave them piece by piece every time we watch something like that. And it's so frustrating because I know, like, on the one hand, like, they have to know this history. They need to know. And on the other, just looking at that image in that picture of the young boy watching the abuse of another Black person, it just reminded me that Black children were never able to hold on to their innocence.
Right.
Ever. And it's so unfair and so frustrating that that's the case.
How did you see Just Mercy, or how did you show it to your students?
My kids, my actual.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it was on one of those streaming.
It's on demand?
I think so.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. Matthew hooked it up. He does all the tech stuff. So in relation to this documentary, I think for me, what struck me was how little Ida B. Wells was talked about. And he also didn't go into a lot of detail about the fact that, like, for all intents and purposes, she was poised to be the next leader of, like, the Black community during this time period. And the reason why they went with Booker T. Washington is because, actually, I won't answer that. I'm wondering if you guys could answer. Why do you think, instead of Ida B. Wells becoming the face of the movement after all of her advocacy, instead she gets replaced by Booker T. Washington?
Because Frederick Douglass passed the torch to her.
He did. He absolutely did. They were friends. So why do you guys think Ida B. Wells was passed up for Booker T. Washington? Come on, y'all. Somebody take a stab at it. Don't make me just cold call on one of you guys. I know you can hear us. Oh. So why do you think, in the part of the documentary that we just watched, Henry Louis Gates talked a little bit about Ida B. Wells. We also talked a little bit about her, and we talked about how, like, her advocacy for lynching. And she was really good friends with Frederick Douglass. And when Douglass died, you know, it was supposed to be like a passing of the guard to Ida B. Wells, but instead she didn't become like the leader of the Black community. It was Booker T. Washington. So why do you think they passed up Ida for Washington? That is part of it. Absolutely, Tiffany. Because she was a woman and not a man. Yes, absolutely. We're talking about the late 1800s, early 1900s. And everyone's like, yeah, that. So, yes, Ida was very, very fiery. She was very fiery. She had a lot of heart and a lot of guts, and she said what needed to be said, and she didn't care who didn't like it. And at that time period, being like that and being a woman was not acceptable whatsoever. And there were times where people wanted her to like cool it and to reel it in, and she wouldn't do that. So in a lot of ways, even though there is some value in some of the things that Booker T. Washington was trying to get the Black communities to partake in, at the end of the day, a lot of people would see it as going with a safer option. And can anyone think of another duo in history during the Civil Rights Movement that offered that same kind of conundrum of going with the safer option? Yep. Good job, Irma. Good job, Rukaya. Yep. Martin and Malcolm. Although I would argue Martin was also very revolutionary, especially towards the end of his life. And if you guys have not read the speech, I know that Miss Williams' class has, but if you guys have not read the speech, definitely want to check out Beyond Vietnam. Sounds very Malcolm X-ish. Three Evils of Society too.
Yeah, and they're both on YouTube. If you want to just listen to him, you can listen to him.
Yeah, instead of reading it. That's true.
Yep. So Three Evils of Society and his Beyond Vietnam speech.
Yes.
Tiffany read them both. So
nice. He said one of the things that shocked me was the fact that Blacks were separated from the whites, and if they didn't obey the law of Jim Crow, they were penalized, and the penalty was death, which was a horrible act. Yes. Yeah. Which is why so many wanted to leave.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, Ida B. Wells she gets looked over a lot. She's one of my heroes. They overlook her in the founding of the NAACP as well.
Yeah, she was one of the founders.
Yeah.
And our homie, W.E.B. Du Bois, who, I have a lot of love and respect for, but, he was a product of his time, and
they were sexist.
Yeah, they were. And they kept her name out of the official, founders of the NAACP. But she was one of them. She was absolutely one of them.
Yep.
And I would even argue that without her advocacy around lynching and without her continued writing, she met this woman, let me tell you something about Ida B. Wells. This woman was such a bad mamma jamma that she had a 5-month-old son and traveled with her son to meet the president at the time to talk about what was happening. Now, and then I think she ended up having, what was it, 6 kids? And she always found it hard to try to juggle her advocacy, being an activist and also having children. But she found a way to show up consistently. And it's so frustrating. She really didn't get the credit that she deserved until after her death, posthumously. Her daughter published her autobiography, which Ida had started maybe about 20 years earlier. Her daughter published it after she passed away. And, you know, now she's starting to get some of the recognition and credit that she deserves. But this is, unfortunately, for a lot of the women in the movement, a lot of times they don't get recognized for their greatness until after they're dead. And that's what's so frustrating. You can, you know, when you think about Malcolm X, his widow, who else? Martin's widow, Coretta, Winnie Mandela, revolutionary Black women. They picked up the mantle and ran with it. And a lot of times they're overshadowed by their husbands. So shout out to Ida.
Yeah, always shout out to Ida. Does anyone else have anything that they would maybe ask Gates, or any way that they're what Ms. Ridgway?
Cameron said, did we sing happy birthday yet? Not yet. We're about to. We want to know if you guys have any questions. Anything. What was the question, Ms. Williams?
I was going back to the discussion questions. Cam, do you have any answers to the discussion question? I saw you clapping at the end of the documentary.
I love when they do that.
Huh?
I love when they do that.
Yeah.
They clap.
Is it Irma's birthday?
No. Tiff's birthday is tomorrow.
Okay.
You guys are hilarious. All right, doesn't look like they have any questions.
No. You want to go ahead with your announcements
Ooh,
then?
Cameron did that. That's not nice, Cameron. All right, so I'm going to put, and this is the sibling rivalry. I'm going to put Ms. Williams and I's schedule. And what we have done is we have a week-by-week play of our live, like when we're going to have live questions. And we're going to be on the AB schedule. So if you guys want to click on that, you can. For those of you that are in my class, I'm going to post this along with like a kind of probably long-winded explanation video of everything, what the next couple of weeks are going to look like. And also, as a reminder, we only have 6 weeks of school left. So you guys, we're almost done. So take a look at that. Essentially, what we're going to be doing is we're going to alternate on an AB schedule, and this is to accommodate both me and Ms. Williams' schedules. And we moved the time period back a little bit later. I'm really, really sorry about moving the time. I know that you guys are probably used to us coming on at 11, but our schools, both of our schools have gone to this like period schedule. And so for my school, it's like advisory 1st, 2nd, 3rd on Monday, and then 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th on Tuesday, and it like alternates the days. And so I wanted to, I have IB anthropology during 5th period. And that if you guys know anything about IB, like I can't miss those classes, and I don't want to like mess up their schedule. And so moving it later makes it possible for me to continue, for us to all continue to be able to meet together, but just at a later time. So I really, really hope that you guys are able to do the 1 p.m. to 1:50 p.m. time slot. I'm really sorry about moving it. And hopefully those of us, especially our kiddos that are not from Northeast and not from Central, we really want you guys to be able to still rock with us. So hopefully the 1 to 1:50 works for you guys. As always, we're going to be recording it. Michelle said, honestly, 1 p.m. works better. Yay. She said sleeping in time. I know. And unfortunately, Ms. Williams and I won't be able to sleep in because we're going to have like office hours. So, but anyway, so if you guys scroll through, we even have the dates on it for you. So if I were you, I would like set a reminder in your phone for these dates. And I'm going to try to send out an email on Monday, just as like a reminder with this information for all the people that signed the consent form and signed up for class. And yeah, we're, oh, and the only thing is, when is it? May 25th. There's not going to be any class on Monday because it's Memorial Day. Hopefully we'll be able to like cook out, but probably not.
In our own backyard.
In our own backyards. So yeah, do you guys have any questions about that schedule? Before we sing happy birthday? Happy birthday. I got the hot dogs. Who got the plates? I'll bring the plates. And I'll bring some veggie burgers. And that's when everybody's like, ew, veggie burgers. Oh, one more thing. Let me put the YouTube channel in the so all the videos have been uploaded as well, so you guys have access to that. And this is a YouTube channel. If you guys can go, I would say, you know, subscribe to it. That way you get notifications every time a new video is uploaded. So that way, like if you oversleep or you miss a class or whatever, you'll still be able to get access to those videos. Kebabs. Yes, especially veggie kebabs.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Onions and peppers and mushrooms.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm hungry. All right. So it was wonderful having you guys. I always love when it's a smaller class too. I feel like they get more active in the chat box sometimes. They wasn't on Tuesday, but they are today. Look, they're playing in a hole. You know, it'd be really cool though, Miss Williams.
What?
If we're able to like maybe do like a cookout or something at like in the summer when things relax.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. A meet and greet for everyone.
Yeah, like African American History meet and greet.
Yeah, we meet like in Fairmount Park somewhere.
Yeah. That would be so cool.